I'm Bethany and welcome back to video number 2 for the anatomy series 2. This first part, we're going to talk about the structure of the head, which is the skull. Although you have a bajillion muscles going on underneath your skin, muscles, you also have a skull, which there are actually a lot of parts of your face where there's more skull that you can actually feel, like this, maybe your cheekbones, you know. So yeah, we're gonna break that down today. Supplies you're gonna need for today, very simple, very easy. A pencil. We're gonna go through the types of pencils that I use on this video. You could just use a mechanical pencil, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. A sketchbook, and no tracing paper whatsoever. We're not tracing anything today. We're going to learn how to become a measuring tool yourself. You're going to learn how to do all the measurements that all the artists do, including myself. So let's jump into it. This is all you need. We're going to learn how to measure stuff today. Number 1, take your pencil. You're going to hold it straight out from you, like so, straight out. And you're going to hold it very loosely with your fingers, okay? Very loosely. The reason why you want to hold it straight out from you is you want to make sure that you're taking the correct perspective measurements. But you're going to hold it straight out from you so that you are taking the right measurements, because if you take a measurement with your arm all the way out and then you bring your arm in, it's going to get wonky and you're not taking correct measurements. So you have your pencil, right? You have it held out in front of you. So we're measuring out this table. If you want to measure, like, let's say the corner, like this side here, you would take your pencil and you see how this finger is the edge of this table, and usually I will bring the pencil tip to where the end is at and act as if I'm like drawing on the edge, so then I get the correct measurement. And then with the same length, you're going to be able to measure, like, oh, from the measurement of this back part compared to this is shorter than this. Or if you were going to measure like this book, you would put your finger to the end of where the book is at, go to the tip, make sure it's the right measurement, and then you want to compare like this book measurement to this, you would be like, oh, that's almost about the same size, except this is a little bit taller than this. It's gonna help you out a lot with like facial proportions, and when you're measuring like the length of the head compared to like the side width of the head. Another thing to do also, use your pencil as a guide, as like a straight line. So what I mean by that is, like, you can see, like, you see where this is hitting the top of Bob Ross over there, you know? And then you have this hitting the eyes. You would know where that lines up. Or you can even do it vertically. You can test to see if, like, you see where the glass is at, and you can be like, oh, that's not really straight, that's at an angle. This is straight, this is at an angle, that's not really straight. You know, that's like the best way I can explain it. I wish I could explain it better. I don't know, it's weird trying to teach people what I've learned from my perspective, so hopefully that helps. I use that a lot in all of my drawings, paintings, everything. You are going to learn that as an artist, you are a visual measuring tool. You no longer need a ruler to measure everything out because you have your handy dandy pencil and you just measure it all out. Alright, so now that we've learned how to measure things, we're going to finally jump into this skull drawing. Anybody out there that has specific pencils, I just use the 3H. All I remember is that the H is lighter, so you'll make lighter strokes with this. It's very light on the page. And then I use a 5B later on. So the B is like, I think of that as bold, it's out there, you know, you don't have to put much pressure down, you're gonna get some shading marks and all that jazz. So starting off here, I'm starting with the lighter pencil, or if you just have a mechanical pencil, just go in with some very light marks. Obviously, you're gonna start off with a basic circle and a line of where everything is in the middle, usually a third of the way down you'll put a line of where the chin is going to be going. See? Here you can see where I'm like measuring out just to double check, even though I've drawn this skull probably like 5 times in my life. Still need to check out where your measurements are meeting. And then here you can see that I'm going in with a mark to define where the middle is at. Again, keep it very loose. I will go over marks 1,000 times in the beginning stages with a very light pencil marking, because later on you can tell where the actual marks you need to make for your final sketch. Okay, so you have kind of a little bit of guidelines going on here. The next thing that you are going to do is the skull is kind of made up into like, I would say like 4 basic shapes, because you have the circle. Why am I holding so many pencils? Sorry. You have the circle, which is the cranium of your head where it holds your brain. Skull. The skull part, you know. And then you have the nose, and then the eye sockets. So that's the skull, the eye sockets, and the nose. 4 basic shapes. Honestly, that's probably the biggest thing you want to take away if you're just starting out and learning all this stuff. I know a lot of people will say that learning the specific names of all the bones and scientific stuff is important, which I would say yes it is, but if there's one bone you need to learn the name of, it is called zygomatic bone and the zygomatic arch, but we'll talk about the arch later on. But that is your cheekbones, so right here, right below your eye sockets. It comes out, and if you feel right below this is where there's like a little underneath, you know, there's nothing underneath. That and the, what is it, the brow something line. It has another scientific name, I don't know how to say it, but it's your brow arch. I usually will create like a rectangle, or what is this, a polygonum. I don't remember names of shapes. I'm in college, why would I need to know that? So that is what you're going to look for. It's kind of like the same exercise that we did in the first like fundamentals of figure, is figuring out the simple shapes. See how that plays into this next video is because you are looking for the simple shapes of the skull. In all honesty, you probably never even need to learn the names of the different parts as long as you're looking for those simple shapes. But here, I feel like when you are learning the structure of everything, you're going to be able to build on top of that, and it just makes things in the process a lot more simple. Okay, so now that we have like the most important part of the skull, which is like the top half, I would say like from the nose up, this is pretty important, like the eye sockets, all that jazz. That's important, but the second part of the skull that's pretty important, which kind of blew my mind when I thought about it in class when I learned this, is your jaw. This part, the mouth that moves, this part is separate from everything else. So the skull itself is one big chungus thing, one big chunk, you know? And your jaw itself, this bottom part, that's the only part that moves. That's the only separate part from your skull. I don't know why that like exploded in my brain, but it just, I had a moment, you know, where I was just kind of like, whoa, that's kind of cool to think of, because when you think of your mouth moving, I don't know, I just kind of thought of both parts moving. Again, this is just to practice everything to get the feel of where the structure is at for the skull itself. So don't get too detailed. I didn't even go into detail of like the teeth. That's just because, I mean, if you want to, go for it. Use you know? So now that you have a very light sketch of everything, and you have a bunch of scribbles on there, you know, nothing specific, it doesn't have to be perfect, you're going to lightly erase all your lines off. so that you can then go back in with a stronger pencil marking of where everything is definitely at. At this stage, you can start shading in some of the parts, kind of like how we did with the simple shapes. Kind of like how we, yeah. Just go back in, shade out where those are supposed to be. Yeah. Also, when you are making your measurements and you personally see a specific pattern that you like personally. For me, I like to always note where the half is at and where it's meeting. And for this particular one that I was going off of, or at least for most skulls where they meet in the halfway point, is right below where the nose bridge is at. So like, here's the top of the nose bridge, here's the bottom of the nose, and it kind of is like right below that, right there. That's where like the halfway meeting point is. So if you measured from that point to the chin, took that measurement, and so like this, and you took it all the way up to this, that would be the halfway measurement point for the whole thing. I know some people will like to take measurements of like the comparison for the whole skull compared to the side, or they will take the size of the eye socket, and they will compare that to different parts. I will do that for some of my drawings, even like where you measurement one specific thing and you see what the relationship is between something else, just to get the correct measurements in your drawings. And just like that, you have created the front view of the skull. Now we are going to jump into the profile view of the skull. In my opinion, the profile is a little bit more trickier just because, okay, for me, when I started drawing people, I tended to chop off their craniums. They didn't have a brain. Do not forget the cranium. Point taken, okay? Don't forget it. Don't chop it off. Don't be like me. Anyways, you're gonna start the same way like you did with the frontal view. You're gonna start off with a very light circle. Again, do not make super harsh marks. Get your H2 or lighter, you know, whatever pencil you're using, make lighter marks. Don't make super dark marks, because this is just a rough sketch to get the feel of everything. Now with the profile view, it's a little more trickier. After you make this circle, you're going to put a line in the center and a line in the middle, horizontally and vertically, just that you can have some guidelines. You can see here I will add an extra, kind of like a crescent moon on the underside of it, because your cranium is a little bit bigger. And right there you can see how I am taking the measurements of the side profile view compared to the full length of the face and where that ends. So that halfway mark in the middle of the circle is actually going to be where your the ridge of your brow ridge is going to be at, like we talked about from last video, like where the eye sockets are at, and that bone right here, that is going to be the center part of your guideline line. Again, don't be afraid to make a lot of scribbles. You need all those extra lines just to find where the actual placement is going to be in the end result. It's going to help out a lot. I even know sometimes when I can tell something's going wrong, I will not erase it just because I can then see if the new line works or not, so just trust the process. So right at the bottom of the circle, you can tell where I start to jut out the line, which is one of the most important bones that I talked about for the front-facing view, which is the zygomatic bone, your cheekbone, also the zygomatic arch. This arch goes all the way back, and then it kind of lays on top of where your your jawbone lines up with it, if that makes any sense. So this arch will go back, and it's actually kind of cool because then you can even like use your own face to figure out stuff. I know sometimes I will do that and I'm just like, okay, what happens here? And you can feel where like your bones are. If that's like weird at all, that's a little weird. That's a little weird. But do it anyways. There is a division. So where your zygomatic arch goes back, and then it kind of is like a gear, okay, like a lever. So like you have two things. You have where your ear bone actually connects in, so like your ear hole right here, and then you have your jawbone, which meets up right next to that. And then your zygomatic arch will be laying kind of on top of those two parts. So bam, bam, and then bam. The most important thing that I just find interesting about this is it makes things a lot more simpler to find out where the angles are happening. I don't know why. It's just kind of like also thinking of the measurement in between like your eye and your ear. I will get that messed up all the time trying to figure out where the heck the ear is placed, but when you find out where the center part is. Okay, I know some people will say that the ear itself, the ear hole, is the center of this, but actually from the reference that I was going from, I'm not 100% sure, but I have always found that right in front of where your ear hole is at, that is the center. This is half center of the entire skull, because most people will just look at the face and they're like, oh, the important stuff, and then they'll be like, oh, the ear's probably just right in the middle. It's not. Don't mess that up, okay? Just take measurements, double measure, triple measure, heck, quadruple measure. It's gonna help. Alright, so the hardest part about drawing a profile view as well, other than the fact that you don't want to mess up the cranium, is the side profile view of where your nose jolts out and your brow ridge is at. And there's just like a lot of angles, all the angles in the world, okay? It can be really, really tricky. My best, let's put this book back. Also, book. Classic Human Anatomy. I got this, it was recommended from either somebody in one of my anatomy classes or my professor even recommended it, and I got it because, to be honest, there's never a day in my life that I don't learn something new about anatomy or measurements and stuff, so I just got a book. You don't really need a book, but I think it is helpful. And I'm a nerd. So, yeah. What was I saying? Alright, so what's going to be helpful on this actual profile view, and you can even tell there's a couple times that I tried to do this to show with my pencil what I mean. Alright, so basically, you're going to take this pencil. I'll even use myself as an example. So, when you're measuring out, remember how we talked about using your pencil as a line? You see how when the pencil touches I don't even know if this is gonna like visualize things for you, hopefully, I don't know. But you're going to take your pencil and you're going to see what lines up with everything. Obviously, your nose, okay, not for the skull, obviously, but your nose, once we get into the muscles and individual parts of the face, your nose is going to stick out the most. But when you're measuring stuff, you're able to tell how everything lines up. This is key. This is important. Learn it. So just like we did before, you're going to, after you get a rough sketch of where everything is at, you're going to go in with your pencil. Now your pencil. What the nuggets am I talking about? Your eraser. Go in with your eraser and you're going to lightly erase everything so that you can finally go in and shade out the different shapes and stuff. Again, when you make those measurements and you're like, oh my gosh, this is like a third of this and this and this, like, make those marks, make those notes that make sense to you. Another big factor, we're not talking about the neck in this one because I think that comes into play a little bit later on, but we just need to focus on the skull right now. But where the cranium angles at in the back, you'll see in the drawing, where it angles off. Use your pencil again to find those angles. Find those lines. They're not always going to be straight because the back of your skull does not go off like, it's not straight. It's more like a this, and then your jawline is more like a that. That, and then that. None of this. I'll see none of that. Again, so just to kind of wrap up everything, don't forget about your cheekbone and the arch, the zygomatic arch, your zygomatic bone. I know science words are weird and a lot to learn, but if there's anything you take away, it's this bone what makes a lot of help. It helps out a lot, okay? It helps a lot. And your eye sockets. Just learn where the structure is at. I think why it's so important to learn the actual anatomy and structure of everything is so that you understand the structure of it all. It's kind of like a building. Architects don't just go straight into building walls of a building. They have to structure everything out or else your house is gonna cave in and you have there's just nothing. Okay? Anyways, that is it from me. We have learned the structure of the skull. Next video we're going to be learning about all the muscles on your face and how complicated it really is underneath all the skin. Like, there's a lot of muscles going on. We're not gonna go way too in depth, but I think just learning to see how many muscles there are is gonna help you understand how to structure everything even more. And then we'll go into detail on the eyes and the nose and the mouth and the ears. There's a lot to the face. I hope you guys have a lovely day, whatever you're up to, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!